Hello everybody. Hey, today we're just going to do a quick tear down on the 124019 and see what we got inside the differentials and go from there. So let's go and get started. We have the latest 124019 car here, and we're going to take a look and see what's inside. One of the good things on these, I'll show you. The latest version of the cars are coming out with aluminum hexes, so that's not an upgrade that you'll need to do. Just pop this off and verify. Let me throw my wrench on the ground first. So sure enough, aluminum hexes. So that's one thing they've listened to us about. I think the aluminum hexes are a nice upgrade. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to pop the front and the back off, and we're going to look inside the differentials. And we'll open up the differential, see what we have inside the differential. Okay. Now there's plenty. I've got the focus locked. I'll go down here where I have a little bit more light. So there's plenty of grease in here for lubrication purposes. Now, that's not to say that you can't fill these things up with more grease. There is a purpose for filling them up with more grease, but for lubrication purposes, that's plenty of grease. If you want to put the grease in there to give it more of a limited slip kind of feel, then that's fine. But I haven't seen one of these yet that was dry. And like I said, for the purpose of lubrication, there's plenty of grease in there. And I see shims, and I noticed there's very little play in this differential. So the spider assembly is shimmed, and I would say this thing didn't need to be pulled open, because I don't usually add more grease to the front. I do add grease to the back, and the reason I add grease to the back is just for the purpose of the limited slip. But if you look around each one of these, you can actually see the shims in behind the gears. So this differential is set up really nice, and I'm going to say WLtoys has done a really good job on this, listening to people and seeing the problems that people have had and correcting those problems. They're putting a little more grease in the differentials now, and then the aluminum hexes. And this car should be a really nice one with the extended frame for the guys doing the speed runs. I've seen several guys have already broken 100 miles an hour with these. So I think all in all, WLtoys is doing a really good job with these new cars. I'm going to throw this back together, get it back in the car, and I'll pop the one out of the back. Now, one thing I should probably mention, you need to be sure you put this in on the correct side. One thing that you might do, if you're really new to rebuilding these cars or tearing them apart or whatever, when you get to some area, take a picture of it. Everybody's got a cell phone now, so take a picture of it, and then that way you can remember where everything went. Now I put some, I use this, it's a white lithium grease, all-purpose, all-weather. Use it on quite a few things. And I just go ahead and pack that into the gear, and then it'll go wherever it wants to go once you start running the car. If I add anything on the front differential, that's usually what I add, because it's a fairly light grease. You want the differential to actually be able to function on. I use a heavier grease in the back because it helps you when you launch, keeps you from breaking traction on just one tire. And this is what I use. I've had this for years and years. So I will put this in the rear differential. The front one looked okay. And I know a lot of people think you have to have lots of grease. The way grease works, you don't need to fill that thing with grease to be lubricated. So we're not going to fill it up. Anyway, I'm going to button this end of it back up, take this end apart, and we'll take a quick gander and see what's inside the back. One thing to keep in mind, one thing you might want to do at some point on these rear end on these has dog bones in it. The same CVDs that are in the front will go in the rear on this vehicle. You're much less likely to lose this. I mean, I hit something the other day on the 144.001, and I popped out the CVD from the drive cup on the differential, but I did not lose anything because with the CVD it's captured. So this one I will order some CVDs, and I heard, and I don't know if this is correct, but the CVDs from the LR Racing are supposed to fit this. I'll probably just go ahead and order a set and see if that's true or not. But I know that the front CVDs will fit the rear of this car. You don't have to take the rear wing off to do this, but sometimes it's easier to take parts off than it is to try to work around them. Once you get this down to where you can reach everything, there's 6 screws, 4 on the front, and 2, 1 here and 1 here. These 2 don't need to come out. And then this will just lift right off. There's your differential. I don't know if anybody at WLtoys is listening or not, but if you're going to put just a ring of grease around the middle, you need to put a little more so that it makes contact with the crown gear, which will eventually distribute it to the ring gear. Sorry about that last segment. I had everything zoomed in too far. Got this cleaned off, and I'm going to say this is shimmed. I'm positive, because there's absolutely zero lash in there. I mean, absolutely zero. And you can feel the teeth on the gears. It's a little tight, but I think it's going to be okay. A little bit of run time on it. I think the gears will bed nicely. So let's pop this open and see what we have inside. I'm going to put that heavier grease in the rear end anyway. So I'm going to say this. I didn't really like the amount of grease that they had on the crown gear and the ring gear, but what they've had in the differential so far has been adequate for lubrication purposes. And if you want to modify the function, you can put a heavier grease for sure. So that's what I'm going to do, is put a heavier grease in here. But I want to take a look at it first. But I would say on this particular unit here, adding a little bit of grease to the ring and crown gear would be a good idea. Yeah, there's plenty of grease in here for lubrication purposes. Everybody's got their own idea about what grease is and how it works, but if you dig deeper into the function of grease, that is adequate for lubrication, what's in there now. See if I can see any shims on this one. Yeah, there's shims in behind the gears on these two. So they've done a good job as far as that goes. I would like to see a little bit more lubrication, or at least get it on the gear instead of putting it in the middle of the differential. If you're going to put it in the middle of the differential, make it a deep enough pile. I think it was enough on the front one, but on this one it was not. So it wasn't making contact with the crown gear, and it was not going to be likely to get distributed to the ring gear. So a little more grease in the crown ring assembly would be nice. And I'll show you what I'm going to do. This is very nasty, sticky, gooey stuff. As you can see, it's kind of stringy looking when I pull it out of the container. Just get a popsicle stick, squeeze some of this down in the differential, and we're going to call that good. Don't need to take the gears out. Don't need to get the old grease out. I Just be sure and push it down with a stick to make sure I've got it all the way through. See, I must have hit a little bit of a void there because it's not completely full now. This is just my way of doing it. I'm not going to tell you that this is right. I will say there was enough oil, enough grease in it for lubrication. You know, this is not like a differential on a car where it's got oil in it. These are not sealed gears. And since they're not sealed gears, they're not going to hold oil at all. But the way grease functions, they're plenty. There's plenty enough in there for lubrication. I put this in here to help launch this car. The power to weight ratio on these is, I think, pretty decent just the way it is. And see what that, when you push that other gear in there, it squeezes the excess grease out. So there's plenty. It's completely full of grease now, and that's some pretty sticky grease. So that helps quite a bit with the launch. But I'm gonna go off on a kind of a tangent right now, since I'm putting this back together instead of just going into fast forward. These cars, there's a lot of controversy on these, and some people say just buy an LR Racing or whatever. That's fine if that's what you want to do. If you like to tinker, this is a great car to tinker with. The 144001, 124019, and the 124018 are all good cars to tinker with. So if you're into that, if you just want to buy something and drive it, this one is an okay car for that too. And there's nothing that you're not going to break. I don't care. I've got Traxxas. I've broken tie rods on my Traxxas. Hadn't broke anything on my Arma yet, but it will eventually break something. And these will break something. The LR Racing cars are going to break something. Losi's going to break something. So if for people that are wanting to buy this, and then you got the group that comes in and says, no, just save your money and buy an LR Racing. If that's what you want to do, I'm not going to try to persuade you not to. But I'm going to say, if you think you have to do that to have fun with the car, I don't think that is necessary. And that's just an opinion. If you want to go buy one, go ahead. And I think you'll enjoy it. But if you like to tinker, I think this is a great platform to tinker with. And I think you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of it. So that's pretty much all I really want to say on that. I'm not trying to offend anybody, hurt anybody's feelings. Just share for the newbies that are afraid to buy this because they've been told it's just junk and you can just save your money and buy the other car. I do disagree with that point. If you like to tinker, I think it's a great car. If you think you're going to buy an LR Racing and then nothing's ever going to break on it, that is factually incorrect. So take all of those things and lump them together, and they're not worth a cup of coffee, but just an opinion. All right, this is all I do for the ring gear. I just squeeze a little bit of this on here. Maybe more than a little bit. Just make one revolution around and just push it into the gears, and then it'll distribute itself as it sees fit. The one thing you always want to do, take pictures. If you want to, if you're new at this stuff, if you notice this, the front went on the left side and this goes on the right side, just opposite. If you put them on the same side, your car's going to try to go in both directions or in opposite directions at the same time. So let me throw this back together and be right back. I'm going to hit one other thing that I know has been talked about many times, but if you're going to run this thing on the street primarily, I would suggest turning these around. If you look, you can see the two tires, the rear tires are pointed in, they're towed in, and this has an offset hole in the backside of it. So you take these two screws out, you pop these out and you flip them over, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. Okay, the two screws are out. See, these hold the pins on the lower arms. And I think you can see those holes are offset. So you just turn it to where the holes are toward the inside, which brings the rear closer together, which brings the front further apart. See if I can do this without dropping anything. Okay. Now I think you can see the two rear tires are much closer to parallel. Now there's some reason a lot of people, I mean it's not a mistake that they're that way. If you're on dirt like a hard clay track, when you're coming out of a corner, if your weight's transferred to this side, your wheel's towed in, it kind of drives you out of that corner. I'm not going to be running this on hard packed dirt. I'm not going to be racing it. So probably more than anything, I'm just going to be bashing it around. Maybe doing, I don't know, maybe I'll do a speed car out of it. In my my normal way of going with a smaller motor, might try that. But on the street, for just running up and down and running straight, I don't think you need these towed in. I think that's more effective for off-road dirt track. I don't think it lends to stability on road at all. So in conclusion, if you want a fun car that is not going to cost you $200 or $300 to get started into, drive it like it is for a while, get the hang of it, see if you like RC, and go from there. For the people that already know they like RC, I think this is still a good car. Probably if you know you like RC, you're into tinkering. And this is a tinkerer's dream. There's all kinds of parts. If you want to go aluminum, I'm not a huge fan of aluminum. Aluminum just means it's going to break somewhere else usually. Or you're going to break a more expensive aluminum part. Make one place stronger. It transfers the energy somewhere else when you have a bobo. But to each his own. That's what makes this a fun hobby. And for the people that don't like doing the things the way I do it, there's a lot of other ways of doing it. Not to say that any one of them is right or mine is better or somebody else's is better. It's just different. Whatever makes you happy, go out and have fun. That's what this is about. So the one thing I would say, WLtoys has listened to a lot of input, and they've made some changes on these things. The rear end on this is shimmed. It's got aluminum hexes. The one thing that I saw in this teardown was the way the differentials, in my opinion, had plenty of grease in them to drive and not destroy themselves. The one thing I would like to see is a little more grease on the crown and ring gear. So other than that, I would suggest maybe that'd be the thing that you do, is to open it up, do a little preliminary test on it. I mean, when I buy a new car, I pull the dipstick on it before I drive out of the parking lot, just to be safe. Because, you know, anytime somebody else does a service job, you don't know exactly what happened. You don't know what they did. You don't know if they had a bad day or a good day. So not to disparage mechanics or anybody else, but if you do it, you know that it was done. So I'd throw a little grease on the crown gear and the ring gear. I don't even think I would just check for slack in the differential. I don't think I have an old differential around here to show you what I'm talking about. But if you grab the ring gear and hold one of the drive cups and try to turn the other drive cup, if it turns an eighth of a turn, there's a lot of slack in there. The gears are not meshed completely, and they'll withstand a lot more power if they're meshed all the way. If they're just only partially meshed, they're not going to be nearly as strong. This one is the latest version that they have shipped out, and they do listen, because now the first version, the shock oil was way too stiff. They had guys in there that they couldn't even compress their suspension all the way. So they're making adjustments as they go. WLtoys is doing pretty good. My last concern for them is to put a little bit more grease on the ring and crown gear, and then I think they got a good little car right here. All right, I got everything buttoned up on this. The only thing I've got left to do before I drive it is to adjust the toe on this, on the front end. You can probably see it's towed out just a little bit. It's not terrible, but it's too much. So I'll adjust that, and for the people that don't know how to adjust the front end, you've got a link here and a link here. This one is actually for the toe, but this one will have an effect on the toe. If you push the top of the tire further out, it pulls the side of it in. So you have to go back and forth, and what you're trying to do is get when it's in the position where it's going to drive, you want it to where the tires are fairly parallel to the road this way and parallel with each other this way. So see, if I push really hard, I can kind of almost make it parallel. So these have to be adjusted out. Double check and make sure you didn't knock the tire out of parallel with the ground. Anyway, appreciate everybody. You guys are what I do this for, and I really, really appreciate everybody. If you're not a subscriber, think about subscribing. Do a run video on this when I don't have any snow on the road, and we'll see what it looks like. Appreciate it. Everybody take care, and I'll catch you guys down the road.